you shouldn't be up there. Because you have to be so alert that, you know, you don't get a chance to make the mistakes twice, you know. And with aircraft, propeller-driven aircraft, the whole flight deck was full of aircraft. And when there was a flight quarters, those propellers were spinning. And you had to keep in your head, when you had to approach a plane, when all the engines are turning, you can see through the propeller. Well, it's spinning. It's like when you turn a fan on, you know, an air fan. You know, you don't see the blade anymore. You know, it's just up there. You know, it's going so fast, and you have to keep your head buttoned down. That just because you can see there doesn't mean you can go there. And so you learned how to be scared and still do your job, but you did it so that, you know, you didn't want to get yourself killed. Well, you're right there, and you don't have too much control over if you're in the wrong place. You know, you try not to be. And some people, if you were close enough to the island structure, you could duck into a hatch. But there were things that could happen, you know, and sometimes they did. You know, a plane landing and hooking onto that landing wire, that landing wire coupling can snap. And when that thing is under so much tension, you know, it'll just clear the whole deck, you know, and could cut a man right in half if you happen to be in the wrong place. You know, and so you always had that in your head, you know, these are the things that can happen, and when they do happen, you know, there's no reaction time. And so those, and there was cases where that did happen, you know. The landing gear hit the end of the flight deck and snapped, and now the plane is just going 120 miles an hour right up the flight deck, you know, and waiting to hit something. And of course they have the barriers, but sometimes those planes will go through one or two barriers, you know, and there was only three. So, but that was that. The presence on the flight deck, it was critical. You know, nobody's going to say, we'll give you a medal for it, but I mean, you just had to. That was your job on the flight deck, exposed to whatever could happen up there. And sometimes it did, you know. And I didn't happen to be in one of those situations, but you were witnessing it. You're standing right there and you're saying, geez, that thing's not good. And we had one plane take off, and it was a deck launch. It wasn't catapult launch, it was a deck launch. So they start way back by the island. And as he was passing, and I was in the island structure, and I said, that engine doesn't sound right, you know. And sure in heck, he got to the end of the flight deck, and he tried to, you know, pull up, but he torqued over. He did not have the airspeed, and the engine was turning the plane. That's what happens when the engine slows down. And the torque, and he took over and he went in right beside the ship, you know. And unfortunately, that was a bad deal. But, you know, like I said, it happened right in front of you. Say, you know, watching a movie, you know, you're seeing the thing happen. And of course, the helicopter, the plane was hanging back at the aft end of the carrier to be able to go to do something. And in this case, of course, the helicopter came around. Well, the plane was so close as it went in, the deck edge elevator was down. Wasn't up at flight deck level, it was down at the hangar deck level. And as the ship was going 30 knots, so it didn't, and the plane went down right beside it. And actually the deck edge elevator hit the tail as the craft was going down and pretty well crunched it, but they hit it, and this all happens in a couple of seconds. So the helicopter comes over and they have to drop down, where the crash was. Now the ship is already past that, we're already past that, because we were going fast. And he drops in and they watch for first of all, they look at the dye and everything, and at that time they didn't have divers on a plane, a rescuer swimmer, they call them, Coast Guard calls them rescue swimmers, to go in the water, because there was no sign of the pilot getting out of there. His cockpit was open, and you're supposed to have that open on a flight landing order ticket. The catwalk is it's a lifesaver, because it's 6 feet below the level of the flight deck, and if anything does come off of the flight deck, you can get down into the catwalk, and hopefully everything goes over you. And the LSOs had a pretty unique job, because in those days they didn't fly the ball. There wasn't any ball. You see all the flying the ball and this and that, Top Gun. The LSO was one of the pilots, with paddles, and he'd give you this, and you're too high, you're too low, and if you got that, get out of here, And they were right at the fantail. I mean, there was no place else. And they did have a big net, and I have seen them when this thing hit the tail hook hit the deck. The guys, there's usually two of them, and they just, and it's a big fisherman's net, and they just take a dive right under, and now they're under what's going to happen. And it just those catwalks are lifesavers, basically. I mean, you can get from point A to point B by just, you don't have to get on the flight deck. You can go by the catwalk thing. But in the time, you position yourself someplace where if something does, when it would happen, it would probably happen there. You have yourself someplace where you can get out of the way. And like I said, it works. It's good. The crashes on the carrier were not that frequent. I mean, there was things when, they missed a wire and this and that. You could hit the barrier and nothing went beyond that, And we didn't have anybody crashing into the island structure or something like that, coming off, And so it was fairly, you got into a routine thing.